Have you ever looked in the mirror and wondered about the incredible journey your ancestors took to bring you here? For the Bengali people, that journey is not just a single path, but a massive, epic adventure story written in our very DNA. Forget everything you thought you knew about origins, because the Bengali story is a wild, beautiful mix that stretches across continents and through thousands of years, proving we're truly a testament to human movement and connection. Imagine a huge, vibrant tapestry woven with threads of dazzling colors. That's the genetic makeup of the Bengali people. It's not just one or two colors, but a rich blend of many, each thread telling a story of different groups who traveled to and settled in the amazing region of Bengal over a super long time. We're talking about influences from folks connected to the ancient Indo-Aryans, the really old Austroasiatics, the fascinating Tibeto-Burmans, and even the people linked to the Dravidians from way down south. Each of these groups brought their own unique genetic flavor, mixing and mingling to create the incredible diversity we see today. Picture this: around 4,000 years ago, groups of people linked to what we call the Indo-Aryans started moving into the part of the world that includes Bengal. They weren't like an invading army taking over everything at once, but more like ripples spreading out over time. These movements, happening around the end of the really old Harappan civilization, didn't just change the languages people spoke, eventually leading to Bengali, but also brought new ways of life and ideas, like the beginnings of the caste system. Scientists see clues of these ancient travelers in our genes, specifically in something called the YDNA haplogroup R1a. Think of haplogroups as genetic signatures passed down through families. Finding R1a in many Bengali people points to this westward connection. It's like finding a hidden stamp on an old family letter that tells you where it came from. But here's where it gets interesting. This genetic signature isn't the same for everyone. Some groups in Bengal, particularly certain tribal communities, have different genetic stamps, suggesting the Indo-Aryan influence wasn't a one-size-fits-all deal. And get this, the genetic evidence hints that mostly men were on the move during these times, leaving a stronger male genetic signature than a female one. So, while our language clearly sings songs of Indo-Aryan roots, our genes tell a more nuanced story about who came and how they mixed. Now, let's go back even further in time. Imagine people speaking languages from the Austroasiatic family, languages that are among the oldest spoken in this part of the world. These folks were likely in the region even before the Indo-Aryans and Tibeto-Burmans arrived, potentially laying down some of the very first genetic threads in our tapestry. While it is a bit tricky to pinpoint exactly how much of their ancient genetic signature is in mainstream Bengalis today, some studies suggest it might not be as strong as other influences. Their presence in the deep history of the land is undeniable. We see hints of connections to Southeast Asia in some Bengali groups, which could be tied to these early Austroasiatic speakers. But the genetic picture is complex, and some of the East Asian connections we see might actually be more linked to another group of travelers. There's a specific genetic marker, YDNA haplogroup OM175, that shows up in both Austroasiatic and Tibeto-Burman speakers across a huge area. So, when we find it in Bengalis, it's like a puzzle piece that could fit in two spots, making us look even closer to understand the full picture. Speaking of those other travelers, let's talk about the Tibeto-Burman connection. These are people whose languages are spoken across a vast region stretching from the Himalayas to Myanmar. Living so close to Bengal, it makes perfect sense that they would play a big role in shaping our genetic story, and the genes agree. There's strong evidence showing a significant Tibeto-Burman influence on the Bengali gene pool, especially in Bangladesh and among groups who aren't Brahmins. Studies consistently show that tribal communities in Bangladesh who speak Tibeto-Burman languages have strong genetic ties to similar groups in Northeast India and Southeast Asia. They carry specific genetic markers that are more common in those regions. In fact, if you look at the overall genetic makeup of people in Bangladesh, a noticeable chunk, maybe around 15% to 25%, shows East Asian ancestry. Even in West Bengal, we see this influence, though perhaps slightly less in some groups like Bengali Brahmins. This variation across different parts of Bengal hints at a complicated history of how and when these groups mixed. Anecdotally, sometimes Bengalis are even mistaken for people from East Asia, which just goes to show how visible this genetic thread is. Bengal's location, like a bridge between South and Southeast Asia with the Bay of Bengal as a busy pathway, made it a prime spot for people to move and mix. Interestingly, the Tibeto-Burman groups in Bangladesh actually have a stronger link to mainland Indian ancestry compared to their relatives in northeast India, suggesting a really intricate mixing process happened here. Some analyses even show that the broader Bangladeshi population's genes cluster closely with people from the Far East like Tibetans, Chinese, Thais, and Nepalese, further highlighting these awesome East Asian connections. Now, let's turn our gaze southward to the ancient land of the Dravidian languages, mostly spoken in southern India. Even though Bengal is geographically distant, our genetic story is also linked to these communities. Studies show that even though Bengalis speak an Indo-Aryan language, we share a genetic pool with Dravidian speakers. It's like finding out you have distant cousins you never knew about. This suggests our ancestral populations either shared a common, very ancient root or mixed through migrations a long time ago. There's a genetic pattern seen in modern South Asians, including Bengalis, called the Indus Periphery Cline, which is thought to be connected to the spread of Dravidian languages. This points to a deep, shared history in the genetic makeup of Bengalis and populations linked to the Dravidians. Ancient movements of people from West Asia around 6,000 years ago, who eventually became the South Indian populations, provide a possible timeline for these early connections. As Indo-Aryan groups gradually settled in the Ganges region, they interacted and potentially merged with the people already living there, some of whom might have been Dravidian speakers or related groups. So, the Dravidian genetic thread in our tapestry could be from both incredibly old shared ancestry and later interactions as people moved across the subcontinent. Diving deeper into our genetic story means looking at the tiny instructions passed down through either our fathers or our mothers. Think of YDNA as the father's signature, only passed from father to son, and mitochondrial DNA mtDNA as the mother's signature, passed from mother to all her children. By studying these genetic signatures, scientists can trace ancient family lines and migration paths. Looking at the father's side first, studies on Bengalis reveal a cool mix of YDNA signatures, showing that many different groups of men contributed to our heritage over time. Interestingly, the mix is different in mainstream Bengalis compared to some tribal groups in Bangladesh. Mainstream Bengalis often show more of the R1A, H, and L signatures, while groups like the Chakma, Tripura, and Kasia have more L and Q. This tells us that different groups of men came to Bengal and settled in different areas or at different times. The R1A signature, as we talked about, is linked to those west to east movements, potentially with the Indo-Aryans. The H signature is also significant and is thought to have originated in the Middle East or South Central Asia a very long time ago, like 40,000 to 50,000 years ago. The L signature is thought to be connected to the ancient Indus Valley civilization. On the other hand, the higher amounts of L and Q in tribal groups show a strong link to Southeast Asian populations, suggesting a shared ancient origin with groups from that direction, possibly traveling along the coast of the Bay of Bengal. So, the YDNA story of Bengalis is a mix of influences from Central Asia, the Middle East, South Central Asia, and Southeast Asia, and even within the Bengali population. There are regional differences in these paternal signatures, highlighting just how complex our family tree is. Now, let's look at the mother's side, tracing the maternal lineages through mtDNA. Studies on Bengali mtDNA reveal a wide variety of maternal signatures, showing that women from many different backgrounds contributed to our heritage through the ages. A big and important maternal lineage found all over India, including Bengal, is called macrohaplogroup M. A specific branch of this, and 2, is found a lot in Bangladesh as well as in South India and Sri Lanka. This suggests that a significant part of our maternal ancestry comes from ancient, indigenous South Asian populations. When scientists looked at the mtDNA signatures in tribal populations of Bangladesh Chakma, Marma, Tripura, they found a different mix compared to mainstream Bengalis, who showed less genetic variety on the maternal side in some studies. Mainstream Bengalis commonly have maternal signatures like M, N, R, A4, and U to B. What's really cool is that certain maternal signatures like M7, M21, A4, A9, U to B, and R21 show a genetic link between Bangladesh and Southeast Asia, pointing to maternal gene flow from those regions. Individual genetic tests have also revealed maternal signatures like G to A1D, which is mostly East Asian, Southeast Asian in Bengali individuals. There are even similarities in mtDNA between Bengalis and Tibeto-Burman indigenous communities in Bangladesh. All of this tells us that our maternal ancestry has strong roots in South Asia, but also significant influences from East and Southeast Asia, with potentially different levels of diversity between different Bengali groups. This complex maternal heritage truly shows the dynamic history of people moving and interacting in the Bengal region. The genetic landscape of the Bengali people has been dramatically shaped by wave after wave of historical migrations and population movements over thousands of years. Think of it like layers of paint on a canvas, with each migration adding a new shade and texture to our genetic picture. From the very first humans who settled in the Bengal region, leaving behind traces dating back tens of thousands of years, to more recent historical events, these movements have left their mark. Archaeological digs have found evidence of ancient civilizations and human settlements going back an incredibly long time, showing that this land has been home to people for ages. These early settlers likely contributed to the foundational genetic layer of modern Bengalis. Scientists talk about something called ancient ancestral South Indians AASI, representing the deep ancestry of the first hunter-gatherers in the subcontinent, forming around 40,000 BCE. This ancient lineage, related to groups like the Andamanese and Aboriginal Australians, is likely a part of our very deep roots. Physical studies also suggest an Australoid element in the population, possibly linked to these early settlers. The idea that people linked to Dravidian languages were spread across India before the arrival of Indo-European speakers further supports the idea that the genetic heritage of these early populations is a big part of the South Asian gene pool, including ours in Bengal. Then came the Indo-Aryan migrations into the Gangetic Plain after 2000 BCE, bringing not just their language but also a significant cultural and genetic impact. As they gradually settled the region, they interacted with the people already living there, who were often farming communities. Finding certain types of ancient pottery in western Bengal around the time of the Mauryan Empire provides archaeological clues to the spread of these Indo-Aryan speakers. Genetic studies suggest that these migrations, particularly during the Bronze Age, involved mostly men moving into the area and mixing with the local populations. This male-biased gene flow might explain why we see a stronger Indo-Aryan signature on the Y chromosome, especially in certain social groups. Scientific research even points to the genes of upper caste Hindu Brahmins having connections back to Eurasia, aligning with the story of Indo-Aryan migration. As these newcomers adopted practices like wet rice agriculture and expanded into new areas, they blended with the existing farming society, creating opportunities for genetic mixing. So, the Indo-Aryan migrations left a clear genetic footprint on the Bengali population, contributing to both paternal and possibly maternal lineages and influencing the social and cultural fabric of our region. But the story doesn't stop there. Beyond the early settlements and Indo-Aryan movements, Bengal continued to be a place of movement and interaction throughout history. While many invasions came through the northwest of the subcontinent, some of these groups, like the Greeks, Huns, Pashtuns, Mongols, Turks, Uzbeks, and Mules, might have had an indirect genetic impact on Bengal over time. Even the British arrival by sea in the 17th century added another layer, though perhaps a smaller one, of potential gene flow. There are also stories and some genetic hints suggesting that migrations of Sufi scholars in the medieval period might have brought Middle Eastern ancestry into some Bengali populations, particularly those who trace their lineage to them. Bengal's location has truly made it a melting pot, a natural meeting point for different groups of people on the move. Our genetic makeup shows connections with distant populations, including groups from the mountainous regions linked to Mongolians and people from the Iranian plateau, highlighting a continuous process of genetic exchange. Ancient trade routes also played a big role, connecting different parts of South Asia and leading to genetic mixing. Furthermore, historical ties and the influence of Indian culture in Southeast Asia led to South Asian genetic mixing in populations there, suggesting that people from Bengal were also traveling and mixing with communities in Southeast Asia. The combined effect of all these different waves of migration and gene flow over thousands of years has created the incredibly diverse and mixed genetic landscape of the Bengali people we see today. To truly understand the Bengali genetic story, it's helpful to see how we compare to our neighbors in South and Southeast Asia. These comparisons reveal both the threads we share and the unique patterns that make us who we are. Genetic studies show that Bengalis share a good chunk of genetic similarity with other South Asian populations. It's like having a big extended family spread across the subcontinent. Studies involving large genetic databases show that South Asian populations, including Bangladeshis, are broadly related. However, within this big family, Bengalis might have a unique spot, reflecting our history of mixing between groups from the north and south of India. Even though we speak an Indo-Aryan language, our genes show a connection to the Dravidian-speaking populations of South India, hinting at shared history or ancient interactions. And, as we've seen, the Tibeto-Burman speaking tribal groups in Bangladesh have strong genetic ties to similar groups in northeast India, showing a close shared ancestry and more recent interactions. Interestingly, the Tibeto-Burman groups in Bangladesh have more mainland Indian ancestry compared to their relatives in northeast India, again pointing to the complex mixing that happened in Bengal. Overall, Bengalis are genetically connected to various South Asian groups, showing a history of shared ancestry and gene flow, while also having our own unique genetic signature shaped by regional influences and specific migration paths. Now for one of the most fascinating parts of our story, the connection to Southeast Asia. This is a truly notable aspect of Bengali genetic origins. Studies consistently reveal a significant genetic link between certain tribal populations in Bangladesh and Southeast Asian groups, backed up by specific genetic markers and how our genes cluster in analyses. In some genetic analyses, the broader Bangladeshi population's genes show a strong connection with populations from the Far East, including Tibetans, Chinese, Thais, and Nepalese. This East Asian link is so real that, as mentioned before, some Bengalis are occasionally mistaken for people of Southeast Asian descent. Bengal's location, acting as a bridge between South and Southeast Asia with the Bay of Bengal as a historical corridor, undoubtedly made this genetic exchange possible. Research also shows that there's been South Asian genetic mixing in various Southeast Asian populations, suggesting that people from South Asia, including Bengal, also migrated to Southeast Asia in the past, perhaps linked to the spread of Indian culture in the region. This shows a complex back and forth of people and genes between South and Southeast Asia, with Bengalis playing a significant role in this interconnected history. Here's another crucial piece of the puzzle. The Bengali population isn't just one big, homogeneous group. There's incredible diversity within, and our genes show that there has been some genetic separation based on where people live and their social or religious affiliations. Scientists have looked at potential genetic differences between Bengalis from different areas like Bangladesh and West Bengal, and even within these regions. Some findings suggest that people in Bangladesh might have a higher proportion of East Asian genetic components compared to those in West Bengal, although other studies show more variation in East Bengal, possibly due to different historical migration patterns. This seeming contradiction just highlights how intricate our genetic history is and the need for more detailed studies. Even the cultural ways we group ourselves, like into Bengals from East Bengal, Bangladesh, Godas from West Bengal, and North Bengalis might be linked to subtle genetic differences reflecting how these regional groups settled and interacted over time. Population movements, like people moving across the border between Bangladesh and West Bengal, have also influenced the genetic landscape, with some genetic samples from West Bengal looking quite similar to those from Bangladesh. These regional genetic variations likely come from a mix of historical migrations, geographical factors, and different rates of mixing with neighboring populations. Genetic differences are also seen within the Bengali population based on social and religious groups, particularly caste and religion. Some research suggests that Bengali Brahmins might have a different genetic profile compared to other Bengali groups, potentially with less East Asian ancestry and more ancestry linked to ancient Iranian farmers and the Indus Valley civilization. Studies on Muslims in India generally show that they are often genetically closer to their non-Muslim neighbors in the same area than to other Muslims across India. This suggests that when people changed their religion historically, it was more about adopting a new identity while staying in their local communities rather than a large-scale movement of new people. This pattern likely holds true for Bengali Muslims as well. Research in North Bengal has shown genetic distances between Muslim, Gurkha, and Rabha populations, indicating closer relationships between certain religious and ethnic groups within specific regions. The historical development of the caste system in Bengal, with its emphasis on marrying within one's own group, has probably played a big part in keeping genetic distinctions between different social groups over time. Studies on groups in West Bengal who traditionally marry within their own community have indeed shown considerable genetic variety between different castes, with potential differences in genetic markers and the proportion of different ancestral components. The practice of endogamy, marrying within a specific social or religious group, has historically limited the flow of genes between these groups across generations, allowing for the development and maintenance of distinct genetic profiles. The genetic story of the Bengali people is deeply connected to our language and culture. Exploring these links helps us understand our history and who we are. The Bengali language, part of the Indo-Aryan family and developed from older forms, fits with the historical narrative of Indo-Aryan migrations. However, genetic studies suggest that while Indo-Aryan ancestry is present, the spread of the Bengali language might have happened more through different genetic groups adopting the language rather than a complete replacement of the original population by Indo-Aryan speakers. Connections between Bengali and other languages, like Sinhalese, hint at older shared ancestry that could be explored through genetics. Also, the influence of Tibeto-Burman languages in certain parts of Bengal, especially east of the Padma River, might line up with areas where there's more Tibeto-Burman genetic ancestry. Studies on Tibeto-Burman groups in Bangladesh even show that their paternal genetic history is more organized by language than by geography, indicating a strong link between language and ancestry in these groups, which could extend to the broader Bengali population that is mixed with them. So, while the main language is Indo-Aryan, our genes show contributions from various linguistic groups, highlighting a complex dance between adopting languages and inheriting genes. Our cultural practices, especially how we choose who to marry and other social customs, have likely played a big role in shaping the genetic patterns we see today. The historical development and continuation of the caste system in Bengal, with its focus on marrying within one's own social group, has been a major force in maintaining genetic differences within the population. This practice has limited the exchange of genes between different social groups over many generations, leading to the development of distinct genetic profiles. Even religious practices, combined with marrying within the group, might have influenced where certain genetic components are found in different religious groups in Bengal, particularly in the context of historical events like the partition. Specific genetic markers, like those involved in the immune system, have also been studied in Bengalis and show diversity that can help scientists understand genetic differences and potential links to how our bodies respond to diseases. So our cultural practices, especially the tradition of marrying within certain groups and the historical social structure of Bengal, have likely been key in shaping the amazing genetic diversity and the way our genes are structured within the Bengali people today. In a nutshell, the genetic origins of the Bengali people tell a long and incredibly dynamic story of continuous movement, interaction, and the lasting influence of cultural practices. The evidence from lots of different studies, looking at genes, historical records, and languages, paints a picture of a population whose ancestry is surprisingly complex and has many layers. The main groups who contributed to our genetic makeup, the Indo-Aryans, Austroasiatics, Tibeto-Burmans, and Dravidians, have all left their mark on the Bengali gene pool, and the amount they contributed varies depending on the region and social group. One of the coolest findings is the significant amount of East Asian mixing, likely from Tibeto-Burman migrations and interactions. This is particularly noticeable in Bangladesh and among non-Brahmin communities, adding a layer of complexity beyond the more commonly recognized Indo-Aryan and broader South Asian influences. Looking at the paternal and maternal genetic signatures further highlights the diverse family lines that have come together in Bengal. With connections reaching as far as Central Asia, the Middle East, South India, and Southeast Asia, we also see that the Bengali population isn't genetically uniform. There are differences based on region and social or religious groups. The practice of marrying within certain groups, deeply rooted in our social fabric, has played a crucial role in maintaining these genetic differences over time. The relationship between our language and our genes is also clear. While Bengali is an Indo-Aryan language, our genetic heritage reflects contributions from other language groups who once lived in or interacted with the region. Ultimately, the genetic origins of the Bengali people are a rich and intricate masterpiece, reflecting our unique position at the crossroads of South and Southeast Asia. The story revealed by genetic research is one of constant movement, interaction, and mixing, resulting in a population with a truly diverse and surprising genetic heritage. As scientists continue to study our DNA, especially with more comprehensive sampling and the analysis of ancient genetic material, our understanding of this fascinating chapter in human history will only continue to grow and amaze us.